This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror Show, 91.3 FM, WCW in Worcester. And on the show with us tonight, talking with us about his amazing comic book, which I was introduced to at the Rock and Shock convention a couple of years ago, comic book creator Ben Goldsmith. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Ben.
Well, hello, Christopher. How are you? Does anyone call you Christopher?
No, they call me
Good.
Dr. Chris.
Well, then I will never do that again.
Damn right. Unless you gave birth to me.
You know what? Nope, didn't. Check.
Nope. Ben has a comic book called The Seance Room, which is I like the first issue more than I like the second issue, but I don't know. Is there a third issue out yet?
It's actually going to be out in about 2 weeks.
Okay, so is it one issue a year?
It was, buddy. So that's actually been sort of a huge thing where it wasn't supposed to be, and then the artist just lost track of time, lost track of a lot of stuff, and so we have switched over to a new artist. Dustin Irving is taking the helm as of this new issue 3 and forward, and he has a time of I'd say about like 3 to 4 months in between each issue. So as of issue 3 moving forward, there will be like a considerable less lag time.
For anyone not familiar with The Seance Room, why don't you go in some detail about it?
Sure. So, yeah, what we do is this particular tale is this gentleman runs a house, and in this house, there's a room called the Seance Room. The Seance Room is occupied by 6 different ghosts. Now, each issue, someone will go in there. Maybe they're supposed to be there. Maybe they happen to be there accidentally. But if they are confronted by one of these ghosts, they essentially have to live out one of something that they would probably prefer not to. Some of the tales are moralistic. Some of them are just horrific. But ultimately, all of it comes down to the classic formula from Tales from the Crypt or from the Twilight Zone especially, and maybe even more so Black Mirror, with the whole thing of like, it's all wrapped up in one issue and you find out sort of what you came for by the end.
It definitely has a kind of old school EC horror feel to it because people do... it seems like there's like a lesson learned, but you're not exactly going to be... you might not stay alive even after learning the lesson kind of feel. Yeah,
and certainly too with each issue. So to sort of backtrack and give the listener a little bit more about the art thing is that Kayla, who was the original artist, does this very painterly style thing that I loved and I thought was really eerie, and then so Dustin is doing the same thing. So it actually keeps the tone, which is super important to these stories because with EC Comics and stuff like that, you had these incredible artists who were able to create and convey these pretty complex worlds and scenarios in a very short amount of time. I mean, even with like Black Mirror or Twilight Zone, the cinematography, I think, is the unsung hero of those shows. So it was really important to keep that sort of style, which thankfully we did. And Dustin is absolutely just a monster. The guy's incredible. Not taking anything away from Kayla from before. Her art is stunning as well. This is what got this whole thing going. But yeah, so we are trying to do that old EC thing in both story and art.
Why was there a change in the artist?
It was getting to that point where, unfortunately, Kayla, she just started getting too busy, and the year between issue 1 and 2 was getting close to about a year and a half between issue 1 and 3, and we couldn't. I mean, unfortunately, from my position, being someone who's starting in this whole thing, I meet a guy like Chris, and Chris buys issue 1, and he likes issue 1, but then unfortunately issue 2 doesn't come out for another year. And then all of a sudden issue 3 doesn't come out for another year and a half. And it really is death for any sort of creative endeavor to put that much time in between them, unless they're like Alice Cooper albums. There's really no reason for there to be that much time in between. I mean, I certainly, of all people, understand that art takes a long time, and I don't mean to sound. I probably am coming off like the writer doesn't know what he's talking about, but I do get that it takes time. But unfortunately, we just had to make that decision, which really owed nothing to Kayla's talent, which is limitless.
How did you get involved with Source Point Press?
Being annoying, honestly. We got involved with them. I met them in Boston.
That hasn't worked for me, and I've been on top of them to try and look at my Dracula comic book for over a year now.
With being annoying? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll work on your annoying skills. I will help you hone you're annoying to weapons grade annoying. But yeah, that was, I saw that at Boston Comic Con. I was following Sean Seal, who does The Rot and Nora on Twitter. And when I met him, I was like, no, what? You're the guy that I really like. And he introduced me to Travis, and Travis sort of put me through the ringer. He was like, we're not looking for anyone. I'm like, okay, but what about later? And he goes, we're not really looking for anyone later. I'm like, okay, but what about like after later? And he's finally like, you know what? Fine. Send me 9 pitches. Of those 9 pitches, let's see if I like any of them. So I did. I sent 9 pitches. And then of those 9, he picked 3. Of those 3, he said, now drop these like really detailed descriptions of the different pitches. And so I did. I wrote, like why I like them, why I think they'll sell, why, this whole just like, and then finally at the very end, he was like, all right, we like Seance Room now. And then there was a whole thing from there. But I did find out about 1.5 years to 2 years later that Travis essentially kind of already knew what he wanted, but he just made me do all that. But then I found out years later that he really didn't even care about any of that. He was just making me jump through hoops to see how much I would put up with. Because I think the biggest thing is what I've realized is that you could be the absolute greatest comic book writer or artist of all time with SourcePoint Press, unless you are going to be at minimum 10 conventions a year and read every single book to try to help the entire company as much as they're going to do the same for you, then that's not the place for you. That was a big thing. I even early on it was all a learning experience, but they definitely took me through the ringer early on. And then, I managed to, maybe some of it got through my thick skull. And now I have 2 other books coming out with them besides Seance Room. The one just dropped. I'll actually send you the PDF. Just dropped last week called Beyond the Demon and the Sea. And we got Ben Templesmith to do the cover art for it.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. Very cool. Very excited.
Yeah, that's very, very cool.
But that I can without a doubt say that came from being a team player, learning how to, because Rotten Tail, did you see that we got the movie made and the premiere and all that stuff with Corin Nemec from Stargate and Parker Lewis? Yeah,
I saw Corin's tweet about it.
Cool. Yeah. So, I definitely worked hard to make sure that people knew about it. I contacted a lot of the local Boston area stuff, even though it was a Michigan-based company and a Arizona-based film crew, so they had nothing in Boston. But I really, really tried my hardest to make sure, and it had nothing to do with Seance Room, really, And then David Hayes sent me this 1 in 50 variant of Rotten Tail, which I did not expect, nor did I ever think I deserved, really. But he did. And that's sort of like how they work. I really can't say enough good things about them as a company and as a publisher.
Besides Dracula kind of being stalled at the moment, I have another comic book that I'm supposed to have a meeting about tomorrow. And I try to get on top of someone else's project or whatever to write their book. But they were taking forever to get the friggin' character, their character Bible to me about, they were like, okay, so this is the idea, this is the plot, and this is what I want to do. And I'm like, great, okay, I'll bang out 22 pages of that in a month or 2. And then fine. I was like, I just need one thing from you. I need a Bible. And then I need to know who all the characters are. I need who all your established universe is and stuff like that. There's no comic book, but he's got all the ideas and he's got the concept art already kind of done up of what he wants it to be, which is fantastic. But he had no Bible written out.
Yeah, it sounds like you have the thing that most people who want to be artists have, which is the innate desire to finish something, right? Like that. I'd say that is.
Well, I'm not an artist.
No. I mean, an artiste, right?
I'm a writer, but I want the artist. If I'm working on someone else's project, I want the artist to make a Bible for me.
Right. No, I don't mean to misspeak. What I meant was any sort of form of art, right? Like a writer, a dancer, an actor, literally put anything in it. And what I found is that most people just don't have it in them to finish a thing, it sounds like you have the opposite problem where it's like, I want to finish a thing, and people are standing in, which they will stand in the way of that. Finding those people who want to work, it's wild, right? Like I will all right. So the artist for Beyond the Demon and the Sea, who obviously Ben Templesmith did not draw the entire thing. He just did the cover because I'm not that famous. I'm Templesmith cover quality, but I'm not Templesmith interiors, and nor do I think he actually does any interiors that aren't for himself at this point. But the interior artist is the guy Davey Broyles. Now Davey came up to the SourcePoint table at Detroit last year. he was showing his book, and I think I've told him this, but I wasn't like immediately struck with it. It wasn't something that I would have been like, all right, this is this is the thing, because he does this very like interesting, scratchy, very stylized type of art. But here's the thing: so Travis, the editor-in-chief, Travis McIntyre, who he was like, work with this kid, do something with him, and I was like, okay. So I got to talking with him, and he was one of the most hardworking dudes. He got an issue of his comic out with me before my third issue of Seance. So in the time that it took between issue 2 and 3 of Seance Room, which is my flagship, supposed to be, he busted out an issue. It just goes to show you that, like, God, I mean, now that I'm trying to make a career of this, and it's the bane of my existence, is people who won't finish something, which is what you're finding out now. And
it's not even finishing. It's just like, get me the material to get started. I've had twice now trying to jump on someone else's project, and it's just like, I need you to do a Bible. I don't know who your universe is. You can tell me as much as the plot that you want it to be, but if you have characters already in mind and how you want them to be, I need that sent to me before I can start, because I don't know. I mean, I could create characters, it's just going to be a whole bunch of level added work to it.
You try to be malleable to get product before you get staunchly Chris, right? Like I will transform into a different thing to fit the artist that is willing to work, even if it's not necessarily or Ben or whatever that is.
We'll go back to this conversation on Facebook. I'll probably edit the last 5 minutes out just so we can go back to the Seance Room. With the Seance Room, there was one thing that I took away from it that I kept looking at it, and like I said, I'm not saying the second issue is bad. I just like it. I just like the first issue compared to the second issue more.
Perfect. Great. That for each issue, it will. We intentionally want each one to be like, Pepsi owns a lot of different soft drinks, but people will always prefer Dr. Pepper over Mountain Dew and vice versa.
The character in the Seance Room reminded me a lot of a certain character created by Frederick Gardner in Action Comics #1. And no, it's not Superman. Because when you think of Action Comics #1, you think of the big boy scout himself. But Action Comics #1 was also the first appearance of Zatara, best known as the father of Zatanna.
Zatanna.
Yes.
Oh, you know what, Chris? I did not know that.
Yeah, there you go.
Well done, sir.
I should go work for DC Comics as that guy who works in the basement that just tells the CW, oh, hey, in Flash number 25, panel number 7, you should have whatever the frick the actor is who plays the Flash or whatever. Run like this.
Yeah, totally.
Because that guy literally has a job of just working in DC Comics' basement, reading comic books, and then telling Warner Brothers, okay, so in Flash issue number 725.
Yeah, that seems like a dream job that someone made up, but it actually, that like exists. You know what I mean? That every time...
And by the way, for anyone who wants to correct me, The Flash has been published since the 1950s. He's had over 725 comic books, so I don't want to hear about it. I mean, yes, he went back to original numbering, but so did Superman and Batman. And Superman and Batman, at least for an alternate cover, when their issues hit 800, they had an 800th issue. It continued with the numbering that they had, but they had an 800th issue to acknowledge that of the standalone Superman or Batman comic book, this is issue 800.
You know what I always thought was kind of interesting that Marvel recently over the last like 3 or 4 years called it Legacy. So they have
don't even get me started on that. At least
content aside,
at least DC Comics went back to original numbering on Detective Comics and Action Comics, so they can have the big 1000th issue.
Yeah, I know, and it's. I would say for them it was obviously a cash grab, but for the creators, I think it was probably really cathartic and
those
wonderful.
Comic books sold.
But the idea of the legacy numbering of like, okay, this is issue 44 of this particular run with so and so, but in terms of without essentially they're saying like if we didn't bullshit BS around, I didn't say it, and renumber all this stuff, this is what the number would be.
But going back to my comment about Zatara, do you think so? I mean, he's got that that look.
With Harry, you mean? Yeah, with the main character, the guy who owns it. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? With this third issue, even more so. Like he actually, not to spoil too much, but typically in each issue, a ghost will come out and the ghost takes over, and Harry sort of ringmasters the whole thing and has this sort of detached nihilism about all of it. But in this third issue, he gets his fingernails dirty. You get to see him get real into it. And then I think, especially if you like that part about it, you're going to really dig issue 3.
Cool. What else are you working on?
I have a couple comics coming out with Mad Cave Studios, and then
hold on, go back. What
Yes.
is Mad Cave Studios? Because that is definitely a company I have not heard of.
Oh, great. Okay, so they are based out of Miami. They have a couple books that have done pretty well for themselves. I'd say like Battle Cats.
Wait, Battle Cats? Like,
Yes.
like He-Man's tiger?
I claim no authority or ownership over any of the properties, IP. I just know what I know.
Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became...
Where He-Man transforms Cringer into Battle Cat.
Which is in no way associated with Mad Cave's Battle Cats, available at your local comic store. If anyone's looking to sue me, that's off my shoulders. Yeah, then they have another book called... I have to imagine Mark was... Because Mark London, the writer, he grew up in that time period, I think, and I bet you he gets that question. I'm shocked that I never actually even asked him about that. I just sort of... I've been so focused on like the reading the stuff and getting to work and stuff that I never even thought about it. But because then there's other Knights of the Golden Sun did pretty well. I think Comics Collector, the Comics Collector group, they picked up one of those. The number 1 is like a collectible issue, and then but I'm working on some new properties for them, which one of them will be out in September. I think it goes to comic stores, and then I'm doing this book with Ed Smith and Jay Fosgate called Second Place, and I'm actually really excited about this book. It's bodybuilding aliens documentary format, so like The Office or Parks and Rec, with like the confessional and the fourth wall breaking and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of mockumentaries. Like, obviously Spinal Tap's the first one that comes to mind, but then like Drop Dead Gorgeous and obviously Parks and Rec and The Office. And it's always been probably my favorite format, Waiting for Guffman, my favorite format. So I was like, why can't we do that with a comic? And we went from there. And so it's a comedy, but it's like a heartfelt comedy, like a sliding doors sort of my life could have been this other life thing. And it's really funny. I'm thrilled with how it's looking. Ed Smith, the artist, is he does these really like I don't know. It's like cartoony and heartfelt at the same time, and he puts a lot of work into them. Yeah.
Did you ever see the comedy horror mockumentary called Brutal Massacre?
But yeah, where it's from the point of view of Jason.
No.
Wait, what am I thinking of? Do you know? There's another one.
I think you're thinking of The Mask of Leslie Vernon. But I don't think that's from his point of view, though.
Well, it's like about no, but it's like about the serial like the serial killer, and like he talks to the camera and stuff. Yeah.
It's not from his point of view.
But the
mockumentary comedy is a movie directed by Stephen Mina and stars David Naughton and Brian O'Halloran from Clerks.
Yeah, I love that movie. It's like brilliant. It was the next. I personally think it was the next natural transformation of like, what else do you do with the serial killer genre?
That was along the lines of what I was thinking of when you were mentioning the comic book that you were working on.
Yeah, it's so right, because it's like, what do you do with like this alien book? Like, how do you? The way I approach a lot of this stuff, Chris, is it's like, well, this is kind of a cool idea, but what's the gimmick? And I mean that in the most sincere and loving way possible. Like, I love a gimmick. The Seance Room is a gimmick. Beyond the Demon the Sea, that book I was talking about, the art in that is all tattoo art, like classic Sailor Jerry style tattoo art. And that's the gimmick. Because the point is, I'm way too late to the game to try to create any sort of classic comic in the classical sense. So it's like, what can I do that will at least have it stand out just a little to get Chris to stop by at Rock and Shock, one of my favorite shows of all time, and be like, all right, what's this guy?
I'm curious what Rocket Shock's going to be like this year, because the last couple of years they've had kind of a small turnout, and then this year Bruce Campbell's coming. So
Bruce Campbell.
yeah, Bruce Campbell was their big guest. Last year Rocket Shock was kind of small.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into the reasons why here, too, and there, and what happening, and so on and so forth. But the space was very small, and the guests were kind of low key. I wonder if they could bring back Ted Raimi, have Ted Raimi and Bruce Campbell there.
That would be pretty awesome. Yeah, Ted, because Source Point does a book, Evil Thread, which is an Evil Dead cross-stitch book. And so I'm definitely going to get Bruce to sign a couple of those. That would be awesome. We get Ted and him to sign it. Holy crap, that would be so cool.
People are bombarding them with how much is he going to cost? How much is he going to cost? Photo ops and things like that. Because Bruce is kind of all over the place. He does stuff at his table. Who knows? He's never been a super high ticketed item, but at the same time, you never know.
Well, I would venture to say he could pretty much ask for. They could probably charge a pretty good penny for him, and people would pay. I would pay. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Don't let them hear this. And then I would not pay a lot of money for Bruce. I totally would, bro.
What is the next convention you're going to be at coming up?
This weekend we're going to be at AwesomeCon in DC. We have, local cons will be at Granite State in New Hampshire. We're going to be at Boston Comic Con. I'll be doing Horror or Scaricon in Framingham. We will be doing Rock and Shock again. By the time any of those comes around, issue 3 will be out and ready to go.
Awesome. Besides my own Dracula project, I also have turned somebody else's comic book into an audiobook series.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Yeah, which I'm very excited about. Have you ever heard of Sunstone?
Not yet.
You should look up You and your girlfriend should look up Sunstone and then message me back.
Oh, okay.
It is a romantic comedy comic book by Stepan Sejic, the artist that recently did Justice League Odyssey, Aquaman, Suicide Squad. He's also worked on the Inhumans, X-Men, the Batman Arkham video game comic books, and Witchblade.
Awesome. Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. He's really good.
His artwork is amazing. And then you have seen his Sunstone artwork.
Sunstone Audio.
Sunstone comic book.
Oh, man, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, Sunstone. Look up Sunstone comic book, and you'll be like, oh my.
Super cool.
This is his, very independent comic book. This is his very standalone independent comic book, but at the same time, it's also his very adult, mature audiences comic book, too.
You gotta have one.
Yeah, definitely. And this definitely pushes the bar as how much. It's like volume 1 through 5 was pretty hot, and then in volume 6, he's throwing stuff in there that he definitely never had in volumes 1 through 5 that you're like, oh, well, that's that. Nothing I can discuss on the air, but you check out the comic, you'll be like, oh my.
Added to the Amazon list.
There you go. There's 6 volumes out, and then his wife does a couple books called Swing and Sugar.
Very cool. Thanks for turning me on to that.
Yeah, definitely, dude. It's I hate romances, but it's the best romance story I've ever read. So appreciate you coming on the show with us, Ben. Where can people find you?
You can find me most importantly on Instagram. My handle is at MRBENAU, so Mr. Ben AU. That's really the best place to see anything that's going on, see the crazy things that go on in the world.
Will do, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us. We appreciate it.
Chris, thanks a lot, buddy.